And now we have Blondine. So Blondine has a special place in my heart because we originally located this doll in France several decades ago and brought it back, and Rosalie acquired it from our auction at that time. And it's been a feature in the Rosalie Museum all of this time. Now, I want to tell you, this is how times change, because at the time we knew the information that had been given to us about the doll. But, so this will probably tell you how far back in time it was. We didn't have the use of the internet at that time, so we didn't have research facilities that I was able to go to find out more about the family and about the location of the doll. The doll, which is a Jules Steiner bébé, came out about this particular model about 1870, 1875. And it was sold to a family in the Jura Mountains of France. The family was the Convert family. They lived in a town called, and forgive me if I say this wrong, Oyonnax, in Oyonnax, France. And Oyonnax was famous, and this is, I knew this at the time, but I didn't know as much as I was able to find out now. The family had made a fortune because they made decorative hair combs of the new celluloid that had just been developed at that time. Now, Oyonnax was a town in the Jura Mountains, which were the forest mountains of France, and for centuries, the industry of that town, believe it or not, had been wooden hair combs, making use of the forest around them. And they were very, very famous for their wooden hair combs. When celluloid was discovered in the 1860s, I know it's hard for us to believe that that's what it was, but 1860s, some people in that town said, hey, we're making combs, maybe we could use that celluloid to make hair combs. And the town exploded. They made so much money, and there were, I think, like I read, about 600 families that became involved in the making of these celluloid hair combs. And there is, in fact, an extraordinary museum in that town today about the history of the hair combs. And this is what's so frustrating to me, is that last month we had a wonderful collection of hair combs that we sold, and I wish I'd had them to show along with this doll, because it kind of it's a whole history and a whole story that ties in together. At any rate, the Convert family was one of the families that made a lot of money by selling the new celluloid hair combs. They had a little industry of their own. And either in marketing their hair combs, or simply on a family vacation, they traveled to Paris, where they purchased for their daughter, whose name we don't know, this Jules Steiner Bébé Gigateur, which they named Blondine. We know her name is Blondine because this is the original box that she has been stored in for now 150 years. Blondine is written on there, and she's been stored in that box. Well, it wasn't enough for them simply to have the Blondine to bring home, presumably to their daughter, but they had to find accessories and costumes and pieces to keep adding to this treasure trove of wonderful pieces. For example, here is written on La robe de baptême et le soie longue bleue, 8 bonnets in crochet, diverses choix de Blondine, with her name Blondine, the original label that went with it. And here is written, here is her little doll rattle, and it is written, Hochet a Blondine, that the family kept preciously all these years, along with wonderful dresses, and some of the most extraordinary hats that I have ever seen. The one on top, which is the like a velvet with wonderful feathers coming out of it and tassels hanging down with little silver tips on the bottom, is absolutely an extraordinary example. This is the one Blondine has been wearing, but I took it off to show you because I wanted to show you this hat in detail. And look at how this is made. This is absolutely extraordinary. A beading fringe all the way around the outside. This soft feather with these little tassels coming off of it. And then the inside brim, and then the inside silk with the ribbon inside. Not only are these pieces remarkable and absolute luxury, but the state of condition is unrivaled. There is nothing like it. And that leads you to wonder again, if you get into history and you want to know more about the pieces, did a little girl not play with these things? Why didn't she play with these things? Was there a little girl? Perhaps the pieces were bought for an adult in the family. We just wish we knew more about them. Wonderful accessories and pieces are included too. This is really fascinating. There are two little cases like this, baptême à ma poupée, and inside are, check it out, two celluloid hair combs. How appropriate can that be? This is a wonderful piece of jewelry that has two matching earrings. This beautiful piece of gold jewelry. There's a fan, and there's other wonderful pieces as well. And then there are, again, going with a celluloid, there were two wonderful hair combs with silk ribbons in celluloid, again, undoubtedly made by the family in the Jura Mountains. With the doll is that extraordinary trunk in which many of these things were kept, her original box, and this box, which included 4 trays of undergarments, toiletries, very accessories. Look at these two wonderful jackets. Just filled with them. There is a parasol. So you can tell they went to different shops in Paris because this wonderful parasol is in the box from A la Tentation for bébés and poupées that had sold dolls and sold accessories and had their original label on it. So they purchased dolls, various pieces. And many of the pieces have the embroidery V on them, of course, for Blondine. And an unbelievable work, belonged in a museum. I hope whoever the shoes, there are like 5 pair of shoes, and each marked with a maker's name and of the shoemaker at the time, and in just immaculate condition. Let me just show you this one right here. And there is the original. This is one of the ones that had the BV mark on the bottom for Brazzeur and Vidalier, which was a very luxury doll shop in Paris. So just extraordinary. Please, whoever is able to buy this and acquire it and is the winning bidder, please preserve it intact. It's such an unbelievable treasure. And please go visit that museum in Aix, France, and see what else was being done at the time. And perhaps you can find out more about the Convert family. That's the one place I failed. I didn't find out about the Convert family themselves. That would have been back in like the 1865, 1870 period. And you can do it. I know you can. But lest you think that we do not have other French dolls to offer you from the wonderful Rosalie Weil Museum of Doll Art, you will be delighted because there are some absolute gems. We're starting here at the back with our grand fellows, 2 beautiful Jumeaus that were in all likelihood created for exhibition at the 1889 Paris International Exhibition by Jumeau. Absolutely wonderful dolls. They are size 20. That size alone is so rare that very few examples have ever been found, and likely all of those that were designed for exhibition or were on special commission. These 2 dolls have original boxes, and they have their wonderful original exhibition costumes on them of the Marquis and his lovely female companion, both size 20. They're wonderful. Coming down on the right, another example of, we're trying to show you the variety of the type of things that came out of that extraordinary Jumeau firm over the years, just so many wonderful things. They did their art character movement of dolls called the Séries Fantastique. And they were faces that were different than your typical beautiful child doll. They wanted to do dolls that expressed a mood or a theme. And this doll, which is their model 225, the only dolls of Jumeau that had model numbers on them were the Séries Fantastique. This is the model 225. It was the last doll that was issued in the series, the 225. Later on, after Jumeau sold their rights to SFBJ, SFBJ continued a series of character dolls with the 226, 227, and so on and so forth. But this was the last that Jumeau did, and it's kind of poignant because it's the last he did it, and also it's just this wonderful wistful expression she has on her face. She has a beautiful original costume and wonderful exuberant bonnet. Next to her is, of course, this grand beloved Jumeau Triste, the Bébé Triste, the sad face Jumeau. Very dramatic large eyes. Look at the eyeshadow on that face. It's just absolutely extraordinary. She is a size 16, which is also a very, very difficult size to find. On her side is one of the earliest bébés of Jumeau. I have this argument with people all the time because she's referred to as the doll, as the bébé with the wraparound eyes, which I think is just a horrible description. It's kind of freaky sounding to me. But what they are referring to are these very dramatic, large eyes that they're just compelling. They pull you in. What is wonderful is at the time that these were being made, it was almost like deep paperweight eyes, and what they were looking for was a realism in the eyes. So do look at the eyes and how they have that spiral threading, and then they have the darker iris rims around the outside, and that's what gives them a lot of their drama. Also pay attention to the fact that at this point the eyeliner lining the eye socket is much thicker than it becomes later on, and that adds to the drama of the dolls. The wonderful mauve blushing, that doll is just superior in every way you could imagine. Now, we're going to skip to a little German guy because he came in and he kind of came into the party. He wanted to have fun with him too. And this is the rare art character model 104 from Cameron Reinhardt. Very, very few examples of this fellow are ever found. And I'll tell you a big secret about him. As many of you who collect the Cameron Reinhardt know, how they created the matte finish on their bisque, it has been susceptible over the years to what we commonly refer to as wig pulls. And that is, if you pull up the wig a little bit, you'll see where the top surface of the paint has flaked off, called wig pulls. This guy has none. His bisque is absolutely immaculate, all over his head, front, back, sides. He's just perfect in every way. And that's maybe why he's got that smart aleck little look on his face. But he is one happy guy standing all here with all the French girls. Very, very rare and wonderful. Next to him is another beautiful early portrait Jumeau. She's absolutely wonderful. She's wearing an early Jumeau costume from the workshops of Ernestine Jumeau. And I'm going to pull her up and let you see the back of her dress as well. How beautifully it's made. Absolutely wonderful. Now, what's interesting about this doll is she has a double secret. She also has the label of, believe it or not, the Simone doll shop in Paris. Now, Simone only sold, you know Simone more because they were at their came into their peak during the days of French fashions. And you know them more for having found dolls that are marked Simone on the torso that are French fashions. You very, very seldom will ever find a bébé. This is an early one, and that is why. And she has the original label on her from the Simone doll shop. Beautiful, early Jumeau, fabulous in every way. And then hiding over here under the shrubbery, another German doll that just flew his way in, and we just had to share him with you because he is so wonderful. And this is Grace Story Putnam's Filo baby. Filo came out at the end of the 20s, going into the recession. He never made it because of that. It just didn't work. What is interesting is the original tag that is on this doll I find absolutely fascinating. It's called Filo, the little Aero baby. And I never made the connection with, I always thought of him as flying, that he was symbolic, he was like angel, he was a baby. But it's more like it was trying to captivate on the flying, the aviation that was going on at the time. And I think that a little more research needs to be done into why the use of this name, the little Aero baby on Filo. This is his totally original costume as he was presented from the factory with his original label. And the painted eyes, which are just extraordinary. Now, I showed you a lot of things that seem to fit into different categories, but as I was arranging what I was going to show you, and folks, just remember, this is about 20% of what we will be having in the auction. So I had to pick and choose dolls that I was going to share with you. There were some dolls that I just didn't come up with a full category for. So I have now here a table of things I'm going to show you, a little of this and a little of that, of just things that I think were curious and, well, wonderful. And over at the far end, under the arch, her garden arch, her arbor, we have our lovely lady sitting with her little child, a wonderful automaton and with a beautiful portrait face on her, a wonderful, wonderful example. Standing next to her, one of the prizes of the museum, something many people have just talked about over the years that they can't get over how incredible rarity, condition, artistry, everything going for it, and that is, of course, Mr. Tom Thumb. Mr. Tom Thumb, one of the famous American characters of the early circus days. Wonderful life story in itself. If any of you have ever read about him, do not think of him as just like a circus sideshow kind of person. He was an extraordinary man that traveled all over the world and appealed to many, many top royalty and people who just really loved him. He had great dignity about him, and here he is. This is supposedly, he's not signed, so we can only attribute it to the waxworks of Madame Tassard, made for her, and according to museum records, maybe wearing a costume that was actually made from one of Mr. Tom Thumb's actual suits, but perfectly preserved, absolutely extraordinary. Appropriately standing in front of him should be the wonderful doll by Albert Marque, the French artist doll that is the la creme de la creme, the very, very best of the French artist dolls, the wonderful doll modeled by the French sculptor Albert Marque during the period of the Renaissance of the French doll. What is special about this doll is it is wearing its original costume, which has the cloth label of Marque and Lacroix, which was the Paris boutique in which the first exhibition of the Albert Marque dolls were made in 1914. And those dolls that can be found with costumes that still have her original cloth label in them are absolutely quite remarkable to find. There's a great story about the costume and the doll, and that will be available to the person who does buy this. Absolutely a great doll, beautiful face, wistfully looking out at you, wondering where her next home will be. Went from Paris to Rosalie Weil in Bellevue, a long way away. Where will it go next? Now, we have other things. This is a great doll. This is an absolute curiosity. It is presently on a body which is probably not original to it, because it appears to be a Bébé Brevet body by Brew, its styling, and it does have wonderful bisque hands, which are of the Bébé Brew. However, I want to point out to you that the bisque painting on the hands is an exact match to the head, and the head is, you look at it, and if you know your French dolls, you know immediately Jules Steiner. Of course it's a Jules Steiner. So a lot of mystery as to the complete background of this doll, but no mystery as to its unbelievable beauty, its rarity, a very, very wonderful coloring. The way the eyes are cut, the coloring is just so subtle and delicate, and superb antique costume. This doll is a gem, a winner in anyone's book. Behind her standing, and she thinks she's the winner because she cannot stop looking at herself in the mirror, is this fabulous Jumeau Automaton. She comes with a mirror, and she is standing holding the mirror, and when she is wound, she's going to bow very slowly forward and then look at herself and lift a powder puff and lift the mirror and move her head around, and then she's finally going to stand up straight because she has approved herself that she is indeed the beauty of the house. A wonderful and rare early Jumeau faced automaton. Very, very lovely. Now, this is a wonderful, large, I would say it's a Berrois, attributed to Berrois, Asian poupée. And what's wonderful about this, again, not only has original shoulder plate and head, beautiful consistent coloring, everything about it is perfect and flawless like that, but look at he has little drilled holes below the nose for the insertion of the mustache, which really is an added point on here. Extremely, extremely rare bisque doll head from about the 1860 period. And speaking of early French fashions that are rare, we have this wonderful Brew. This is the pre-smiling face. This is the early version of Brew with the fully articulated body that was deposed by Brew. She's been sitting so long, she doesn't want to stand. Stand up, sweetheart. There you go. Okay. And she has the swivel waist and the fully articulated body. Cute little butt. And, check it out. And she has her original Brew box. Now the Brew with a wooden body, this body was actually not a body that no one had ever thought of before. This body had been being made for well over a century. It was in fact the mannequin body that was made and sold in various art supply shops for many years, and it's, again, a wooden body, fully articulated with the swivel waist and with jointed limbs. And I always like to point this out to people because everyone thinks that Leon Casimir Brew invented a new style body that no one else had. Well, he really didn't. He copied something that was 100 years old. And, you know, that's what recognition of other people's artistry, that's not bad. That's not bad. Put your own twist to it, and he did, because those bodies were very simple. They tended to be crude in their carving. They had no finish on them. They were natural wood, and Brew finished his off very nicely. And I would like to point out that this body comes in various styles as well. Sometimes you will not have the jointed wrist. Sometimes you'll have a kid body and only the wooden articulated arms. So Brew was, you know, looking to find variations based on cost factors for his various customers.